Gentlemen, let's get one thing straight. Respect isn't something you demand with words. It's earned by the way you carry yourself, by the values you hold, and most importantly, by the boundaries you establish. If you want to be respected by women, you must learn the art of saying no, not with anger or ego, but with calm confidence and inner discipline. These 5 boundaries, along with one bonus point, are the foundation of becoming a man she doesn't play with, but deeply respects. A woman will never truly respect a man who doesn't respect himself, no matter how much he gives, sacrifices, or tries to please her. Self-respect is the foundation of masculine energy. It's not about being arrogant or superior. It's about having a clear understanding of your value and acting accordingly. When a man has self-respect, he moves differently. He doesn't allow himself to be disrespected repeatedly just because he's afraid of losing a woman. He doesn't tolerate emotional games, breadcrumbing, or half-hearted attention. He doesn't stay in situations where he's undervalued or constantly has to prove his worth. And most importantly, he doesn't lose himself in the process of trying to be liked. Women are naturally wired to test boundaries, not always consciously, but as a way to gauge your inner strength. If you constantly bend over backward, avoid conflict, or walk on eggshells just to keep the peace, she may appreciate it temporarily, but over time, she will start to see you as weak. Self-respect means you are willing to walk away from anything that diminishes you. It's when you stop chasing, stop begging, and stop overextending yourself for someone who isn't matching your energy. It's in your silence when she disrespects you, in your distance when she plays games, in your standards when she crosses the line. A self-respecting man doesn't argue for his value, he lets his actions speak for him. He doesn't need to explain why he deserves better, he just removes himself from situations that don't align with his worth. That's what creates mystery, that's what builds value, and that's what earns respect, not just from women, but from everyone around him. It's not about proving you're better, it's about knowing you're enough and walking like it. The man who masters self-respect becomes unforgettable, because in a world full of men trying to please, he stands out as the one who stands tall. Emotional control is one of the most underrated traits in men, yet it's one of the most powerful qualities that earns lasting respect from women. The truth is, women will test you emotionally not out of cruelty, but to unconsciously assess the depth of your masculinity and the steadiness of your character. These tests often appear in the form of subtle drama, mood swings, silent treatment, or provocative remarks, meant to see how reactive you are. If you get defensive, angry, or emotionally unstable in response, she feels that you're not in control of yourself, and once she senses that, respect begins to erode. But when you remain calm, grounded, and unfazed, you signal to her that you are not easily shaken, that your emotions don't control you, you control them, and that is deeply attractive on a subconscious level. A woman doesn't want a man who mirrors her emotional chaos. She wants a man who anchors her instability when things get turbulent. Being emotionally controlled doesn't mean you're cold or disconnected. It means you're disciplined. You don't react impulsively just because someone hurt your pride. You don't spiral into arguments just to prove a point. You don't beg for attention or lash out in insecurity. Instead, you pause, assess, and respond only when it serves a purpose. This level of control requires maturity, self-awareness, and an understanding that not every battle is worth fighting. It also means you don't share every feeling immediately or expect her to fix your internal struggles. Emotional control is about maintaining your center no matter what storm she brings. That doesn't mean you suppress everything, it means you process things internally first and speak with clarity, not chaos. And here's the deeper truth: when you master your emotions, you don't just earn her respect, you give her something even more powerful: emotional safety. She feels safer around a man who won't break under pressure, who won't crumble when things go wrong, who can guide the emotional energy of a relationship rather than be controlled by it. Women are drawn to men who radiate calmness, who can listen without overreacting, who can hold space without needing to dominate it. Your emotional control tells her that you don't need her to complete you, you've already done the inner work. That's the kind of man she not only respects but deeply trusts. In a world where emotions run high and attention spans run short, the man who remains emotionally composed becomes rare, and in rarity there is value. When a man prioritizes his purpose over fleeting pleasure, he automatically commands a different level of respect from women. This boundary signals that his identity and fulfillment are not rooted in romantic validation or temporary emotional highs, but in something deeper and more enduring: his mission. A man with a strong sense of purpose knows where he is going, and more importantly, he knows what he must sacrifice to get there. Women instinctively recognize this and, whether consciously or not, feel more drawn to and respectful of a man who is governed by internal direction rather than external gratification. The boundary of purpose means that you do not abandon your goals, values, or daily disciplines simply to spend more time with her or make her feel more secure. It means you do not constantly adjust your plans, neglect your work, or compromise your long-term development for short-term emotional comfort. Many men fall into the trap of prioritizing a woman's attention, affection, or validation over their own trajectory. While this might seem noble or romantic on the surface, it quickly leads to a dynamic where the man becomes overly dependent, lacks leadership, and loses the very qualities that initially attracted the woman in the first place. Moreover, the ability to consistently choose discipline over distraction is a sign of maturity. It requires a man to be introspective, organized, and aligned with a vision larger than himself. This vision could be career-driven, spiritually motivated, creative, or entrepreneurial. Whatever form it takes, it provides structure to his life. Women tend to respect men whose lives have structure, direction, and standards. A man without purpose, who is always available, overly accommodating, or willing to postpone his ambitions to please someone else, will eventually be seen as lacking backbone or drive. This boundary does not require emotional detachment. On the contrary, it demonstrates emotional intelligence. You can be loving, supportive, and emotionally present while also being committed to your own evolution. A woman respects a man who invites her into his world, but does not make her the center of it. It shows that you are capable of leadership, that you can manage competing priorities, and that your emotional world is governed by values, not whims. Over time, this cultivates not just attraction, but admiration, because you become someone who is respected for who you are, not just how you make her feel in a moment. Most men underestimate just how crucial it is to set the boundary of respectful confrontation in a relationship. Too often, men avoid confrontation not out of kindness, but out of fear of losing her, fear of creating tension, fear of being misunderstood. But here's the hard truth. If you don't confront issues directly and respectfully, you will slowly lose her respect. A woman will often push boundaries to see how far she can go again, not necessarily out of malice, but as a way to test your emotional strength, your leadership, and your self-worth. If every time she crosses a line you choose to stay silent, suppress your thoughts, or brush it off just to avoid conflict, she will start to sense weakness, and weakness in her subconscious mind equals insecurity, not strength. Respectful confrontation is not about yelling, dominating, or putting her in her place. It's about having the courage to voice your thoughts and values in a calm, grounded, and unwavering manner. It's saying, "I won't tolerate being spoken to that way," or "If you continue treating me like this, I'm willing to walk away." That doesn't mean you're being cruel, it means you honor yourself enough to protect your mental and emotional space. The truth is, when you don't speak up, you're not keeping peace, you're just delaying chaos. Resentment builds up, frustration simmers beneath the surface, and slowly your sense of masculinity erodes, because deep down you know you're betraying yourself just to keep the illusion of harmony. When a woman sees that you're not afraid to respectfully call out behavior that doesn't align with your values, she begins to see you as someone with integrity, someone who doesn't crumble under emotional pressure, someone who knows what he deserves and isn't afraid to enforce that standard. That creates a dynamic where she can trust you not just emotionally, but psychologically, because she knows you won't let things fester. She knows you won't let yourself be mistreated. And deep down, women crave a man who can provide that structure, who won't fold under emotional weight, and who can draw a clear line between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Setting this boundary also liberates you from the toxic mindset that you have to be perfect or pleasing all the time. You don't. You're not responsible for managing her emotions 24/7. You're responsible for staying in alignment with your own principles. Confronting her behavior when it crosses the line doesn't make you a villain, it makes you a man. And when you do it from a place of strength rather than fear, calm rather than chaos, love rather than ego, you become the kind of man who commands respect without needing to demand it. One of the most powerful yet often overlooked boundaries that makes women respect you more is the boundary of availability. In today's world, where attention is currency and instant communication is expected, being too available can actually work against you. Most men fall into the trap of thinking that the more accessible they are, the more desirable they'll be. So they always answer every text immediately, are quick to pick up the phone at all hours, rearrange their schedules to accommodate her plans, and drop everything at a moment's notice just to be with her. Initially it may seem like devotion, but over time it begins to feel like desperation. Women don't respect what's always available. They value what's rare, what must be earned, and what has structure. The boundary of availability means that you protect your time, energy, and presence like the valuable assets they are. It's not about playing games or manipulating her through silence or delays. It's about making it clear that your life is full, your goals matter, and your schedule isn't dictated by emotional impulses. A man who has a purpose, a routine, a vision, he doesn't have unlimited time to give, and that creates a natural sense of value. If you're always there, always reachable, always willing to drop everything, she doesn't have to work for your presence. She doesn't feel the impact of your absence, and eventually she may start to take you for granted. Being less available isn't cold, it's healthy. It means you know that your time is finite and you choose to invest it with intention. It means that while you care for her and want to build something meaningful, you are not dependent on her for emotional stimulation or distraction. You have things to do, responsibilities to handle, goals to chase. You have boundaries around when and how you engage, and you don't apologize for that. In fact, the more you hold this boundary, the more she begins to see your time as valuable, not because you said it is, but because you act like it is. And this shifts the dynamic. Instead of you constantly seeking her attention, she begins to seek yours. Instead of you always reaching out, she starts initiating more. Because now your presence means something, it's not just handed out freely, it's earned. This boundary also has a deeper psychological effect. It prevents you from slipping into the role of the provider of entertainment or escape. When you're constantly available, you can unknowingly become her emotional crutch, someone she turns to when she's bored, anxious, or insecure. But once you become that person, you lose polarity. You become too familiar, too predictable, too easy to reach. That mystery, that sense of challenge and depth starts to fade. And without mystery, there is no spark. But when you set the boundary of availability, when you become a man who isn't constantly online, who isn't always eager to reply, who has a full life outside of the relationship, you become someone she has to invest in, someone she looks forward to hearing from, rather than expecting on-demand access. It changes how she sees you, not as a man who's always waiting for her call, but as a man whose time is a gift, and who gives it only when it's truly worth it. Sexual integrity is a boundary that most men overlook, yet it is one of the deepest markers of masculine strength and self-respect. In a world that glorifies instant gratification and casual hookups, the man who exercises restraint, who chooses when, how, and with whom he shares his energy instantly stands out. Sexual integrity is not about celibacy or repression. It's about discernment. It's about not allowing your sexual desires to control you or lead you into situations that compromise your standards, your values, or your emotional clarity. A man who lacks this boundary will find himself in entanglements that drain him mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. He becomes reactive, a slave to impulse, rather than intentional and grounded. Women are incredibly perceptive when it comes to this. They can tell the difference between a man who is led by lust and a man who is guided by purpose. The man who is always chasing, always seeking validation through intimacy, always trying to seduce or be seduced, loses his power. He becomes predictable, easy to figure out, and ultimately disposable. But the man who chooses wisely, who doesn't just engage sexually because the opportunity is there, but instead requires emotional depth, mutual respect, and alignment of values, that man is respected on a whole different level. His self-control radiates authority. It tells the world that he doesn't need to be fed pleasure to feel powerful. He is powerful because he has dominion over himself. When you set this boundary, you shift the dynamic from "I'll take what I can get" to "I know exactly what I want, and I'm not afraid to wait for it." You don't get intimate with women just because they're attractive. You're not easily swayed by appearances. You look for more: emotional intelligence, feminine grace, inner peace, compatibility of vision. And if it's not there, you don't proceed, not out of fear, but out of respect for your energy, because you understand that every intimate connection is an exchange. It's not just physical, it's energetic. And when you give yourself away carelessly, you scatter your focus and dilute your power. Sexual integrity also protects you from being manipulated. Women, consciously or not, may use sex to test your control, to shift power dynamics, or to gain leverage. But if you're not moved by every flirtation, if you don't melt at every touch or glance, you become untouchable. You can see through intentions. You can navigate seduction without falling into emotional traps. You become the man who's desired but not desperate, admired but not addicted, engaged but not entangled. This creates a sense of mystery, authority, and depth that most men simply don't possess. And beyond all of this, sexual integrity gives you something even greater: clarity. When you're not clouded by lust, when you're not distracted by the chase, when you're not draining your energy into meaningless connections, you have more focus to build, to grow, and to lead. You show up in the world with strength in your eyes and discipline in your soul. And that doesn't just make women respect you. It makes them wonder how you became that rare kind of man who refuses to be ruled by his desire. When you enforce these boundaries, self-respect, emotional control, purpose over pleasure, respectful confrontation, limited availability, and sexual integrity, you stop chasing validation and start commanding respect. Not just from women, but from the world. These boundaries aren't about pushing others away. They're about protecting your value, your focus, and your energy. Because the man who honors himself teaches others how to treat him. And when a woman sees a man who leads with strength, moves with intention, and lives by principle, she doesn't just like him, she respects him. And in the realm of attraction, respect is the foundation upon which everything meaningful is built.